Welcome all to the Politics of Cinema podcast. We are not your typical film review podcast. On this show, we believe that films are cultural artifacts. There's a political as well as artistic message captured, inadvertently sometimes, in every film, and we are on the lookout for all of it. My name is Aaron Spears.
And my name is Isaac Miller. In this episode, we are doing our monthly Nostalgia Cast. Yes, where we look at movies that we loved in our youths. Not that some of us aren't still youthful. Either from our childhoods or our early, our teens or even early 20s that were formative at one point. But how do they hold up? And how do they hold up both politically and artistically? And this episode, we're looking at the Hughes Brothers' Dead Presidents. This is Aaron's month to choose a film.
That is true. In my head, I have this as the tagline being ruining the films of our youth by watching them as adults, because there's the potential there to get something that you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was, which is not the case for me with Dead Presidents. I have wanted to go back to look at this movie for a while because the Hughes brothers hit at a very specific personal time in my life, and they were a contemporary obsession of mine. I remember what theater I was, when I was waiting to see Dead Presidents when it came out in 95. I could not have been more hyped up for this movie. So it was 2 or 3 times in the theater watch for me, and then on home video a bunch, and the soundtrack played constantly in my room and in my car at the time. What is yours, Isaac? When did you first catch Dead Presidents?
Well, I was 9 when it came out, so I did not see it in theaters. So actually, the first time I saw it was now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for this podcast. Yeah, I had not seen it before.
Oh, excellent. This is going to be interesting then, because that's fresh eyes versus some nostalgia guys here. Interesting. Okay, so then since Hughes Brothers made it, we need to address the Hughes Brothers right away. They, as I mentioned, they were I started my first year in film school studying film theory, history, and criticism was fall of 95. So I was as excited and as primed as I could have been for contemporary films that really excited me. And in 93, when Menace to Society came out, I remember going and seeing that one, although I was not supposed to be watching rated R movies in theaters. I did, went and saw that one in the theater. And the Hughes brothers were these, they were young filmmakers. They were all of 20 years old when they made Menace to Society. I was not quite 20. I was a couple years younger, but it was oh my God, people about my age were doing amazing, I thought, and I still stand by it, groundbreaking independent film work. And it couldn't come along at a better time. I was super into slam poetry and shitty poetry at your local cafe. I was really into hip hop, the poetry of the streets. Menace Society comes out. They talk about they're doing this Vietnam War movie, with Dead Presidents. And I couldn't wait. They had Lorenz Tate back. They had the same DP. Lisa Rinsler was coming back to shoot this movie for him. And I was like, oh my God, I could not wait for this follow-up to Menace to Society. And I was not disappointed at all in the theater. I was ecstatic. I saw it several times in the theater. But I did have that kind of feeling is this going to be one of those? I haven't gone back in, a good probably 16, 17 years to watch this. Oh, no, it was on VHS the last time I watched it. So I was like, man, I have faith in these guys as filmmakers. I'm pretty sure it's going to hold up. So how did it hit you as the fresh eye viewer this time through, Isaac?
So here's the funny thing is one, whenever you put Keith David in there, I'm happy because I'm strongly for Keith David working as much as Keith David wants to work. And hopefully that means a lot because I want to watch him in movies. And I think, it's a movie with a lot of energy and a lot of good acting and a lot of interesting things going on that I don't think really holds together.
Mm-hmm.
It feels in a sense disjointed or structurally, I don't know why. I know technically I can see why characters are doing things. I can kind of I know what their motivations are on the page, I guess. But
right.
What is the structural point? There isn't the reaction action structurally isn't quite there, right? Maybe it's this is one of those moments where I really want to just study script and storytelling more because I feel like I could actually articulate. I mean, we'll talk it over. But what exactly it is that is just sort of missing that makes it I think a good movie, but what could have made it a great movie.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. we can dig in more.
No, I'm with you there too. It's one I think there's a few things that are going into this. One, it's like their sophomore movie. You come out of the gate with this like huge cultural impact of Menace to Society on the film world at large. But also like that's your first movie and you're fucking invited to the Cannes Film Festival. Like there's some expectations for the follow up. I can attest to it. Like they couldn't have been higher set for me. And at the time I was just like, oh god damn, yeah, they stuck the landing. Way to go. We got that second film out. So there is like that whole did you maybe get a little bit too ambitious, too early, too right out of the gates there? I think they did with this one, but I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. I think as we get into it, I was realizing on this watch that I think they've got a lot of great scenes here, and they've got a lot of great kind of film grammar and genre work that they're doing within different scenes. But it's one of those the scenes individually have a bit more power to me than the overall. Once they're all put together, the sum of their parts. Usually, I guess it goes the opposite way, where it's like the sum of the parts is greater, or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I think the sum of the parts in this case are really strong, but the overall whole needs maybe a bit more work or one or two more scenes to really kind of tie stuff together. But there's also, I think there's an element here of expectation that I definitely had going into it, specifically for, a politics and cinema podcast, that I wanted more. Also, we just did a big deep dive on like Uptight, and I've been watching a lot of very, political movies through our February Watch Challenge as well, where I wanted more of like the Uptight or Judas and the Black Messiah. Like I wanted some more of the politics. Like, why isn't this character more radicalized? Why isn't he a bit more like into the Black Power? Like, but that's my problem. That's not the movie's problem. Like, that's what I wanted.
I think that in some ways is a good thing, because in part, like, that's there, right? Like it is
right.
air.
Yeah.
Those movements are there. He's just not interested until
Right.
the very end when he's pushed to his limits.
But that's not the film's fault. Well, I guess it's the film's fault because that's the narrator. That's not the narrator. That's the audience character they chose for Lorenz Tate to play, Anthony Curtis, and he takes you through the story. But it's like I know what's going on socially and politically around this time period and around this guy, this character, but he's not into it the way I kind of want him to be into it. But that's again, I don't necessarily think that's the movie's fault. That's more just like I wish it would have gone this direction, but it went in a different direction.
Well, I think the real problem there is we don't know why, right? His motivations are actually not strong enough, I think, through a lot of the film. In a way, like it's not quite dramatized enough. I don't know if even that's all of it, but like it's like we see all this stuff around, like we see the politics around him. He's not interested. That makes perfect sense. Most people don't take part in social movements, even when they're at their peak. But like I don't really know. Like I know on the page why he's doing what he's doing, but I don't feel what he's doing.
Gotcha. Well, before we get kind of too far into the movie itself, there's a couple of things with the Hughes brothers that I think are of note that may clear up a little bit of this conversation as we go here. One of the things I did since I was being nostalgic was I remembered watching them in the 90s. You had access to filmmakers only through a certain few channels. Like I'm looking at right now here hanging in my basement. I have, because I don't have a Laserdisc player anymore, I bought a frame for my Menace to Society Laserdisc because that was where I remember I bought it and then had to figure out a way to watch it. Somebody either had a Laserdisc player. I ended up actually just buying one that summer after my first year of college because I wanted access to the commentaries that were on all these Laserdiscs because DVDs were not a thing yet. You had access to filmmakers' commentaries, so that was them giving you like a film school, like, around their movie, like, they're behind how we made this, how this shot worked, how we did this, the tricks here, the tricks there. It was gold on those commentary tracks. One of the other few areas you could get would be interviews, and this was not the era of podcasts at all. This is the 90s. One of the long form interviews you could get access to, troublesome as he turns out to have been, was Charlie Rose. You have James Lipston. If you were an actor, like I had acting friends that were in theater programs throughout all of my college career that like would watch Inside the Actors Studio because you'd get an hour-long sit down, sometimes more, with one actor about their process. And like, where else do you get that kind of shop talk? If you're a film geek, other than a commentary track, well, you'd see Tarantino and Sam Jackson on Charlie Rose for Pulp Fiction. I'd see Scorsese and De Niro on there for whatever their project was. So I remember watching the Hughes brothers being interviewed by Charlie Rose for Dead Presidents. And of course, like everything nowadays, that's available on YouTube. So I went and watched it on YouTube, and there's a few choice clips that I wrote down as they were being interviewed by Charlie Rose that came out of it, which I think is really interesting. One they mentioned, which I'd forgotten about, that this movie is inspired by the book called Bloods Black Veterans of the Vietnam War and Oral History by Wallace Terry. So they said they had read this book, and there's just, it's kind of vignette collections, oral history, kind of basically just kind of dictations of these folks' experiences, and that's where they got the idea for Dead Presidents. There was one of the characters in there talked about like he came back and had a hard time fitting in, and it talked about some of his experiences in Vietnam, in the Vietnam sequences in this movie. I think are part of his story, but then they combined it with the there's a 1981 Brinks armored car robbery by the Black Liberation Army that they used for like the heist portion at the end of the movie. So they're pulling from all these nonfiction sources, but telling a fictional story here. And so I'd forgotten about the whole, based on this oral history book, which I was like, oh, it's pretty sweet. But they were also saying too, like in 1995, what was the Vietnam War movie from the Black perspective? Like this movie's kind of a first in the category there.
I mean, yeah, well, that I actually, to be honest, I don't know, but it does seem that way, right?
Yeah.
You
So you get a first in this movie. So I mean, that there's already some important boxes that they're checking. Like their interest is there. There's some source material there. They're breaking new ground also. Like this isn't something that's been looked at. There's tons of Vietnam War movies by 1995, but not this type of Vietnam War portrayal.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, that's just it. Is like you can see that as sort of innovation. You can see it as a new thing, and you can, even without knowing that all of that context, you can sort of feel it in the movie to a certain degree.
Right.
Like part of it is, I mean, when you sort of point out like this is like an attempt at like an epic, right? Like a cross of somebody's life, and I think part of it is not quite being able to pull that off is like, well, that's actually really hard.
It is, and I think they're mostly successful, but it's what you always say. You always constantly point out arcs in movies.
Yeah,
and with an epic, you need to have this arc that is smoothly communicated, and this one's a little rough on the edges.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I'm a little more than rough. I actually think it's not clear.
Well, I mean, all of that aside, though, like as they're going into production and as they're trying to tie all this together, and like we said, it does seem a little unwieldy, maybe as a film, and like one of those sophomore efforts that maybe they just reached a little too far and weren't quite able to rein it in. They were all of like 21 years old when they're putting this project together.
That is wild.
It's so crazy. So Menace to Society, they were like 1920 working on it when that, I think it came out when they were 2021, and they went right into production on this. So as they're, again, like this movie comes out in 95, they didn't just like sit down, research it, write it, direct it, and put it out in 95. This was a few years in the making. So they're 21-year-olds basically putting this out, and it's such a massive undertaking that I think maybe knowing that even at the time, going to see it in 95, but also looking back on it now, like it still automatically gives me a little bit of like forgiveness on some of the rougher edges. Well, so a couple of takeaways from Charlie Rose that's worth mentioning before we jump into the actual movie was, one is the Hughes Brothers are on Charlie Rose in 95 talking about this movie. That is, again, Charlie Rose baggage aside, that show was like, people had to like seek out that show. That wasn't just something that was, I don't know, it wasn't as big in the culture as like if you had a movie that came out and you wanted to plug the movie in 95, even up to this day to a certain extent, but a movie came out in 95, you have a new TV show in 95, you have a new Broadway show, you have a new Vegas review, you go on the Leno, you go on Letterman, you go out and you do the quick talk show circuit, 5-7 minute segment and talk up your project. And they I forget if it was Albert or Alan Hughes, I forget which one it was. Twins confuse me that way sometimes. They said specifically to Charlie Rose, Leno and Letterman won't have anyone on from this film. Like that's a quote. And they were saying how there was no, like they were trying to get on the show. They were trying to promote this show. This was a studio movie.
Right.
And they said, there's no stars in this movie. We can't have you on. And then they would go a step further and say like, they just weren't booking, black films to go on their show and promote it. And then, they're like, and Charlie Rose is like, well, I'm glad you came on my show. And they're like, oh, we love your show. We've seen Scorsese on your show. And they start rattling off all their filmmaker, idols that were like on Charlie Rose's show. So like, they're there for a reason, but also they're saying like, we don't actually have access to really get the word out about this movie.
So this is an interesting thing. Like, I mean, it's not an interesting thing. It's a racist thing. Really fucked up thing. But I guess, it's like was Spike was Spike Lee not getting on those shows, or like would he be the only one?
Maybe the only one, because actually, well, so he actually even asks him. He asks, saying, hey, because like '95, Spike Lee, like he's around, he's a big name, he's made it. This is a post Do the Right Thing, late '80s. Like he's in a lot of ways in the '90s, especially as a guy, going to film school in the '90s, that obsession over Spike Lee. Like he's like the only black filmmaker you hear about in this
Right.
time period. John Singleton maybe, but Spike Lee's the man. Both the Hughes brothers were saying that like not every black filmmaker is an offshoot of Spike, and they seemed a little pissed that like that question always comes up to them.
Right.
They even point out like you've got you've got Scorsese and Coppola. They're like nobody's talking to them about like what's it like being an Italian filmmaker, and so they kind of want that same treatment. They're like it's not categorized that way. Why should I be categorized that way?
I mean, that makes perfect sense. Well, because it's tokenizing, right?
Yeah.
Right, and it's totally token. I mean, the reason I asked was just because he was somebody at the level where if you're going to have a black director, this will be the black director that you get on there, and that's like it, right? Like he gets to be the black
Oh yeah,
director.
no, I know what you meant, Fire. Yeah, for sure. And also, but also, Spike Lee is his own character. So like, he's gonna be the salesman for his own movies, and he's great at it. Whereas this one, like you could, like we were saying, like you could have the Hughes brothers on a Letterman or Leno, like they have their own story. They're fucking 21 years old making their second movie as like this epic, journey of one guy through the late 60s or early 70s via being a Vietnam War veteran. Like there's a personal narrative you could sell here, and they just apparently there was no interest. So like, you got no stars, you guys aren't that, you guys aren't that well known. We're not having you on the show.
Well, I mean, I have a question. So you have sort of like a black film revival in the '90s. I mean, to what degree is this a culture war question? To what degree is this sort of a war on crime question of like, well, you're having black filmmakers making movies about particular subjects, and we don't want to have them there, right? It's like
Right.
going after. Is it going after gangster rap? I don't know. I don't know the context well enough. I'm just wondering, like, beyond just like the obvious, just like obscure black filmmakers won't sell, and we aren't going to promote it. Like today, if you had this sort of situation, like you would have them on, or you'd have Keith David on, right, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it'd be a good interview, and like you see indie movies represented on late night sort of all the time. So I guess like the cultural context of the '90s, which are like shockingly racist. I think it's interesting watching from this moment in which obviously we're grappling with direct white nationalism, but at the same time, like in many ways, the war on crime has been delegitimized within sort of like the political discourse, not for everybody, and not all of its effects being rolled back. But this is at a peak moment, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so, is that how they're being viewed?
I think there's definitely an element of that, and here's a little bit of proof to it. Also, it speaks to institutionalized racism as well. They're operating within the Hollywood structure by this point. Like this is a $15 million Hollywood movie. Like this wasn't some independently produced thing. They had to go to arbitration with the MPA, the Motion Picture Association of America, the MPAA, over the violence in Dead Presidents, which we'll get to in just a moment here when we start talking about the Vietnam stuff. Part of their arbitration was they said they took in a 20-minute highlight reel that documented and showed scenes of other movies that all starred white people being super fucking violent to show the MPAA that like the violence in Dead Presidents is shocking and it's pretty extreme, but it's nothing worse than you've seen in any white horror movie in the last 20 years.
Yes.
From a 1995 point of view. But the MPAA was just like, you cannot show this. It was even down to like, there was a rule with Menace to Society when that came out in '93, again, because they had a distributor for it and they needed to make posters for it. There was an MPA saying like, you cannot have that black man with a gun on your poster. So they took the gun out. They had to airbrush the gun out of all the posters.
Wow.
In order to have it, approved and go out to other theaters.
We do not want the promotion of super predators in American film. I mean, I was literally just thinking like, yes, there is a rotting head in this film. There's also a man with his own dick stuffed into his mouth at one point. It is pretty graphic and violent, but like, Tarantino, let alone horror movies, existed right at this point. And
Yeah.
certainly people talked about the violence. That was not uncontroversial, but like, yes, no, that's so clear, and it's so clear how, I mean, to what degree, I wonder, I don't, their career trajectories are, not straightforward. They haven't made a lot of movies. I wonder to what degree that's affected them.
Well, they're still working, so like it's not. It seems like they're pretty comfortable on their own paths. Like they've been constantly like making productions. It's not all feature film work.
Yeah.
Right at the Adventist Society, this one 95. They did a documentary, American Pimp, in 99 together, and then they did From Hell in 2001, and then they did Book of Eli with Denzel Washington in 2010. Those are their together ones, but they've been doing a lot of separate stuff individual as well, like music videos, TV shows, a lot of production. So
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, just based off filmography, again, I don't know these directors at all either. I just follow their work. Based off their filmographies, like they're finding work. I don't know if it's like this is the work I'm committed and really want to do, or if this is just the work I can find. But that said, they are still working. They could have easily just been like, fuck it, I'm out. I'm doing something else. But I find it interesting. Like they also they reference Scorsese is one of their big influences on that Charlie Rose interview. They referenced Sergio Leone as being a big influence. They reference, like I said, like they reference Coppola as well on there. It's interesting. They were steering in. They were vocally saying they were steering into, we're interested in stories and realism, and we don't want to have an agenda that overrides our story. And they used Oliver Stone as an example there, which I think is interesting because you're talking about Oliver Stone and an agenda overriding your story, as you just made a Vietnam War movie. And Oliver Stone in 95 is known as like the Hollywood director who was in Vietnam and makes the movies about Vietnam at that point.
So this is gonna sound mean, but to be totally honest, a slight bit more of an agenda would have helped to focus things.
So that's what I was saying. Like the baggage that we're bringing to watching the movie right now is like, I kind of wanted a bit more of that agenda.
Right. And and part of it is a little differently from you. I don't feel you need an overt political through line. I don't think it needs to be openly like, well, the radicals are right or something. You just need something a little bit more. I was sort of thinking, so let's explain what this movie is about, because we were like pretty far into this and I keep hinting at the plot.
Sure.
Hey kid, you want to take a little run with me?
Yeah, I'll take a little run with you.
Man, oh man. You're almost as good a getaway driver as me.
I'm about to get my pimp thing on started. Why you always talking about this pimp stuff, man? What's happening?
Women so pretty, even
and I ain't afraid of no war. I just want to do something that's different. Yeah, well, getting your head blown off is different.
So then you gonna marry me when you get back?
You ain't got somebody else.
I don't want nobody else.
To the Bronx. Now you gonna play this Marine War hero.
What you got when you get back here, huh?
What's going on, man?
Girl, come here. That's Daddy. Say hi.
I'm gonna get myself a good job.
Don't you know if I had anything to offer you, I'd give it to you the moment you walk through that door?
We don't need his money. And you can't even put food on your table. Me and Kirby got something in the works. Old bills, man. Sometimes a couple million.
All that money.
So I have it kind of developed into, there's three sections of this movie. The first section is 1968. It's high school graduation for three friends. You then see in a really amazing transition sequence, they head over to Vietnam. That's section 2. The experiences in Vietnam. All three friends end up together by the end of the Vietnam sequence. And then there's part 3 where they return home, and it's the Bronx, 1973, returning vets, the problems that arise there, all the way up through, let's do this heist, rob this armored car full of dead presidents, which it's obviously money, but it's money that's about to be decommissioned and sent to, I think it's like the incinerator or the shredder or whatever. So it's basically, if you can pull off this heist, you have an armored car's worth of unmarked bills that aren't traceable. You're set for life. You're good to go. American dream. Here we come. Oh, you've got Lorenz Tate. He's Anthony Curtis. You've got Chris Tucker, Rush Hour, pre-Friday. Chris Tucker, I believe just like comedian at that point. Chris Tucker in a dramatic turn. And then you have Freddie Rodriguez playing Jose, are the three friends there. They also meet up with, once they're in Vietnam, Bokeem Woodbine has an amazing turn as Cleon, who's the son of a preacher that they know from the area. But the main three are like they're Lorenz Tate, Chris Tucker, Freddie Rodriguez characters.
Maybe we should just talk about this chronologically and how this all fits together.
Yeah.
Or doesn't 100%. So like our beginning, like I'm being mean. I mean, here's the thing: is this? I actually think this is a good movie, but I think it's interesting when a movie that shows so much talent on the screen. I mean, there are striking scenes in this movie, right? The final heist, and I was just saying, like the visuals of the painted masks that they wear is like iconic, right? Like it's just amazing. So I think, thinking through the story mechanics a little bit actually makes it more interesting. Part of what's interesting about like Lorenz Tate's character, Anthony Curtis, I mean, like race is constantly there, right? Like they're young black men in America. His decision to go to Vietnam, though, which is sort of like, I mean, this is you're opening like half hour or whatever of this. He has sort of a young romance. He has like a job which he doesn't tell his parents about, working for Keith David, who runs a bar but also runs the local numbers. He actually goes on a run.
He's also literally a milkman. He's got the milkman job, so he's got like the legit part-time gig.
Right.
And then he's also running numbers on the side.
And Keith David's character is like a Korean vet who is like, yeah, he's a criminal. He's not like a gangster. He's sort of, he does things, it's part of his it's part of it. Well, it's actually exactly like Anthony Lorenz Tate's character. He has a legitimate thing, and then he has another thing that he does to sort of fill things in, because like nothing.
Neighborhood loan shark, runs the numbers game. Also is an amputee. He has a fake leg,
right,
or an artificial leg, I should say. It's not a fake leg; it's a real leg. It's just artificial.
And part of what's interesting about Anthony's character is like, his friends are saying like, you don't want to go to this white man's war, or I don't think I'm going to get drafted, or you should go to college. And he's like, I want to see the world. Maybe I'll go into the Marines. And
it's so like doughy-eyed, like naive. It was like, it's kind of wild.
It's really wild. Like he's just he's a bit of a deer in the headlights. He is with his his high school sweetheart Juanita, where she's sort of the one who, I mean, yeah, he wants to have sex, but like she is sort of the power in that situation. Like she sort of pushes him into it. He's very sort of reluctant about any more commitment to a relationship. He's sort of I mean, this is a movie about like somebody who's like kind of driftless. And if the tone was different, we're dealing with an Elmore Leonard style story, honestly. But the tone is not there.
Right. I do like the tone here because they're wrapping up high school. They're doing the school dance thing. They're doing the first sexual encounter, and it's this really amazingly like awkward / tender at the same time, and it feels so real and so authentic. You've got Lorenz Tate in this scene playing this like insecure, very tender moment, but also like he's got a total lack of experience, and he seems like a child.
Yeah.
Very much so in this scene. I think it's the power of his performance again too, which, or not again, but it's the power of his performance that like in the very next scene, which I'm not going to skip ahead right now. Don't worry, Isaac. But in the very next scene, it's a transition to Vietnam, and he's a completely different character once you get to him in the Vietnam setting.
Right. Which is, I think, the disjunctures, we don't actually see the transformation. We can see it inferred. Right. And that's fine in a different movie, but it doesn't quite hold. But I think, that's the thing is but through the whole movie, he's sort of buffeted by these things. I mean, he wants to like, so, all right. So he comes from, I think in some ways, sort of a respectable sort of middle-class family in a certain sense. Like his brother, like his older brother is really nerdy and going to school. And he can, this is the thing is this, and I think this is what sort of makes the politics of it a little interesting, because the easy story here is he gets drafted. He doesn't go. The easy narrative here, which may have been a clearer line, is he gets drafted into Vietnam. Vietnam is disproportionately black youth, right? And he doesn't go to college. Like he doesn't get a chance to go to college, and then gets fucked up by the war. And instead, his family is telling him, you should go to college. Like his overbearing mother is saying, this is what you're going to do. And he's saying, I want some control. And the two male role models in my life, which is his dad, who only shows up in two scenes, and then Keith David's character both went to Korea, and it seems to have made them who they were. I mean, this is to a certain degree. I mean, if you want like how does toxic masculinity destroy people, this is the film.
Right. It's handed down through the generations.
It's handed down through the generations, but they're not guiding him enough to say, yeah, but it also fucked me up. Like, don't do it.
His dad seems actually specifically silent about it. Like, it's a dinner table conversation here, and like the mom just like, she gets up and leaves the table when he mentions like, I'm listening to the Marines, and his dad's like, I'll talk to her.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
I mean, his dad is like seems to want to give him the space. He sort of gets what's going on there, but he also like doesn't. He's sort of, I think what it is that even though he takes actions and makes choices in the film, he oftentimes feels like he's being pulled along.
Yeah.
Or that once he's launched himself and made this choice, he has very little control, which is not totally untrue to life.
Right. So I think this is part of where the disconnect first comes in, because like we know what 1968 as a year culturally and politically and like, in the Bronx was. And this character, Anthony's character that Lorenz Tate's playing, isn't engaged politically or socially, or there's no talk of, social justice or equal rights or any kind of, protest or activism there. It's sort of, like you said, he's just like, I want to see the world. I'm going to join the Marines. You're like, you know what's going on right now in the world, right?
But I think like I said before, I actually think that is the platform for a great movie, because part of it is, this sort of assumption that you would do this. Well, no, but most people didn't. And a lot of people just volunteer and a lot of people just go along with it. I mean, there's both the discourse
of way out.
Yeah, it's a way out. But part of it, part of what's wild about it is he has a perfully fine other way out. And in fact, Chris Tucker's character ends up in Vietnam because he bombs out of college.
Right.
Like part of it is these guys just kind of fuck up throughout. Like it's like partially their environment. I mean, definitely like the neighborhood provides a lot of options and quick ways out, but they're sort of like this sort of, they come from like these sort of solid, sort of like lower middle class backgrounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, in some ways are built up after the war, and they kind of, it shows the precarity of that, I guess.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. And again, like I'm not faulting it. Like I think, like you said, there's a legitimate, like there's different characters that we're all going to follow throughout this whole movie. Lorenz Tate as Anthony, he's like the center of it. But again, like you have Chris Tucker there as well. You have Freddie Rodriguez's character, Jose, there as well. And so they do represent kind of like different ways that society and the war itself can affect a person.
Yes.
So I think it is split up. So again, like I'm not giving the movie any crap because like that character doesn't act the way I want that character to act. That's fine. Like that's the character you give me. I'm really to roll with it. And so after Anthony has his first sexual encounter with Juanita, he hightails it out because, her mom's back. So as he's hopping fences and running through the neighborhood, it's this amazing transition where it's a kind of like a hard swipe cut to him running through the jungles of Vietnam. So this places you directly into Vietnam. There's no how do they get, like they're shipped. They're just there. It's this hard cut, great transition. He runs from running through the neighborhood. Now he's running through the jungles of Vietnam, and we are hit immediately. So the Vietnam section of this actually starts at about the 30-minute mark of the movie, and we're done with Vietnam by about the 50-minute mark. So this is a very condensed 20-minute section on Vietnam, and we are immediately slapped in the face with some intense brutality. I think one of the things the Hughes brothers have mentioned is specifically in that Charlie Rose interview, but also in other interviews I've heard them in their commentary tracks, they're really interested in like they talk about core mood and creating atmosphere, but also realism. And I think they really nail it. Like that, like I said, like that first sexual experience scene, like it's a really great, tender, almost like teen film coming of age scene. And it's really well done. Like it's a great touching moment. Now, when you're in the war segment, now they're doing their war movie. So now this is like a war movie, but with like a hard horror edge, because there is body horror to war and they show it.
Yeah, they do not run away from it. It's really the atmosphere that they're able to create, the sense of, I mean, part of what it is, there's only a few scenes at base, right? Like they are a recon unit, it's an elite unit, right? And part of what it is, it's not special forces or something like that, but it's one that requires more discipline. You're not going to make it because you're isolated off on your own as a small unit. And the sense of foreboding, I don't know, not even foreboding, the sense of sort of chaos that they're able to create in the fight scenes and in the scenes when they're sort of together is just amazing, actually.
Yeah. Well, also because watching war films through the years, in most war film scenes, you see a specific hierarchy of this person says an order, these people do this, these people do that. This one, I mean, maybe it's also just because very quickly, but it doesn't, like there's someone in charge here. Like there's a staff sergeant or whatever the terms are for them here, but it's almost like they're functioning more as a group than like a strict hierarchy at a lot of points in the Vietnam sections. Because even at one point, like whoever's in charge, like they're checking with other people, like, should we do that? Or like, how do we do this? And it feels like, I don't know, it functions differently than the way I've seen other war movies function, I feel.
Well, it's interesting because the commanding officer, who's a white guy. I mean, he's a low-ranking officer of the little unit. Like, there's our scene. So Cleon, the preacher's son, is. So here's the thing: is they all commit war crimes. You watch them commit war crimes. They all do horrific, violent things. But Cleon is just nuts. So Cleon, I mean, like, there's really, like, he's just been unhinged, and part of it is this. I mean, I guess one of their characters, it seems like most of them are volunteers. And I don't know how this works. I always thought that a tour was a year. I could be wrong. I haven't read about any of this long. A tour was a year. So the idea, like, he's out there for 4 years, like, I guess that's what happened when you enlist. I don't know. But like Cleon's character, like, basically takes a head as a trophy and carries it around until the unit tells him to throw it away because it smells horrible. And
like literally, like, chops it off, saves the head as a trophy. But then also the thing is that he thinks it's good luck.
Right.
So since he's had the head, there's like a specific thing that he's like, well, since we have the head, we've never been ambushed. We've never had this, like, we've never taken fire. We never lost. Like, there's something to that where, like, he feels it's good luck. Like, that's how broken he is.
Of course, the minute he gets rid of the head, they start getting chewed up. Like, they start dying. Yeah. So, but the thing is that when the commanding officer of the unit, who, says throw that away, he argues back, and it is only, I mean, he would have done it under command, right? But he basically has to threaten court-martial to get him to throw it away, and have the rest of the unit say no. Like, Cleon's like, you seem to be the only one who cares. He's literally telling his commanding officer this, and then everyone else is like, no, Cleon, it smells like shit. Get rid of it. Like, you are on your own for your head.
It's a head in a backpack. Get rid of it. Yeah.
But like, part of it is I think that's what you're talking about there, is like that scene of like, yes, this guy's in charge, but like this is the stage of the war. Now, you don't see any of this. This is the stage of the war when, like, soldiers are killing their officers on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
And it would be a low-level officer like that,
Right.
So, like, the little sense of that, not that there's any threat of that, actually. They're all friends, and it seems like a pretty tight-knit unit.
Right.
I think it's also interesting because, the cliche of the multiracial military unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the one that represents all of America, all the ethnicities represented, if you're not going to have black people because it's like a movie from the 40s.
Right.
Is like there, except part of it is this is a movie from the perspective of the black characters.
Yeah.
And that's different. And I don't think it, like, affects it deeply, but I think it's just sort of an interesting, it's a slightly different angle for the scenes and for, whose interiority is being shown.
Right.
And how they relate to things. Like, there is a moment where, they pick up some papers from a dead gorilla, and the propaganda is basically for that the guy happened to have on him is telling black soldiers, why are you fighting a white man's war? Which is literally something that black characters say throughout the film. And the white officer, like, this very non-commissioned officer, is like, throw that shit away. Like, get rid of that immediately.
Right.
And, Anthony is like, sure. But, like, he's reading it. He knows it's there. Like, but they don't play on that. He doesn't go any farther than that. Like you see his doubts, but it's not elaborated on.
Right. Yeah, like it's an inclusion of historical fact, but it's there and it's acknowledged, but it's not. It doesn't become a central plot point. It's not some turning point for anything.
Well, there are things that happen later in the movie that you could have tied together in a connective tissue, but it's not.
But it's not done.
It's there. It's on the screen. You just gotta take that next step. Other interesting. The other part about this section that I found interesting is this is when he's most functional in the film. So there is a way of saying, so this is a person who was listless when he got out of college. I mean, when he got out of high school. He's happy to sort of do petty criminal stuff and, work, but he wants to get out. The military traumatizes him, breaks him, doesn't give him enough when he gets out, but also is the only thing that gives him order and purpose. Like, he is disciplined there, right?
Yeah.
He ignores the fact that, like, he literally, he ignores the fact that, like, not only did he have a girlfriend back home, but she had his kid and he has a daughter. And just that provides, like, the focus for him. It's during the movie, it's the only point in the movie where you feel like he's actually together.
In the military, in the Vietnam sequence, you mean?
Yeah, and when it seems like he knows what he's doing, like he understands what he needs to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's I don't want to say simple is not the right word, but like it's cut and dry. Like, to live, do this, stay alive.
Right.
Like, because it's boiled down to a focus rather than, oh, what should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? Like, no, here's what you got to do. Do this. Here you go. Because there's even the narrative device, I guess I would call it, of he can't bring himself to, like, look at a picture of his daughter or write to her. It's like this. It's like you can't acknowledge that the real world exists back home because you're not going to be able to survive. He's of the opinion you're not going to be able to survive with that kind of sitting there in your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, like that's legit coping mechanism. Like that is one of those things. It's come up a lot more since in, like, war movies, but it's also real. So, yeah, some of the negative reviews I've read about the movie, like, really kind of dig into the Vietnam sequences, which I don't particularly think is fair. I think they're remarkably adept at getting across the horrors of war, the war crimes of the war, what has actually happened to all of these characters. Like we've mentioned, Chris Tucker as Skip. When he flunks out of college and joins this recon unit in Vietnam, so he's back, reunited with Anthony, with Lorenz Tate, with his friend from high school. He is affected by Agent Orange. He also develops a heroin addiction while there.
Yeah.
So when they return back to the neighborhood, now we're in the Bronx, 1973. This is, like you said, this is several years later. This is a lot of time spent in the war. You've got, Lorenz Tate's character, Anthony, who is having trouble adjusting to civilian life. He starts heading, towards alcoholism and drinking a lot more. You've got Skip, Chris Tucker's character. He's addicted to heroin. Again, medical conditions fall out of Agent Orange. And then they're reunited with Jose. With Freddie Rodriguez's character, he was a demolitions expert or explosives expert. He's now an amputee as well. He has a prosthetic hand, and he's, kind of got some pyromaniac tendencies going on there.
And then he also becomes an addict.
And he also becomes an addict. And then Cleon, who was carrying around a severed head for good luck, as a former preacher's son, he hits hard into religion, and becomes a preacher, or at least a minister of some sort himself, when he gets back. But you can just tell, like, you need that Vietnam section and what those characters do to contrast when they get back, to see how they can or cannot adjust. And then knowing what they're capable of in a war situation adds a layer of tension and drama to this, the last chunk of this movie, which is the Bronx, 1973, returning to life, and the heist.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all of that is shown quite well. All the sort of tangible details of, like, that you can see as they sort of fall apart to a certain degree,
Yeah.
I think,
well, because this section is setting up they don't have anything. Like there's nothing left for them when they get back. Like the neighborhood isn't the neighborhood they left. Even Kirby, the Keith David character, he talks about he has to let go a bunch of employees. He can't run the numbers game he used to because the cops cost too much with their bribery schemes. Right. So like there's nothing left for any of them when they return.
Well, part of it, like I said, is like I think the regular tour in Vietnam was a year. He's gone for 4 years. And he was, what, 18 when he left? He literally he hadn't had an adult life at all. He hadn't had any life. He grew up. So he had his formative points literally in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, he didn't have any leave. Actually, I guess that's a question I have.
That's a good question.
Like, yeah. He should have gone home some, actually. Like, this should not be the first time in 4 years unless he went somewhere else during his leave. It's hard to imagine. Yeah, you know, in 4 years, you will have a leave. People had leaves in World War II. And so, but like, yeah, I mean, he's part of it is like, he doesn't know how to be an adult. He's never.
Right.
Adult in the normal world. I mean, people keep pointing out, you know, you're this big bad Marine, but you're not pulling this. You're having trouble getting a job. You're having trouble doing this. And, you know, he's walking into a shitty situation. It's interesting. He doesn't visit his daughter until he has a job. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, I thought it was, when I first watched it, I was thinking like, he's not going, he's avoiding his, you know, his daughter who he's never met. And, you know, this woman who he didn't really have a relation. I mean, you had a high school romance, which is supposed to turn into something else. And, you know, I thought he was avoiding because in some ways he's been reluctant to face up to responsibility. What it really is yeah, it's the scene after he gets a job at a Jewish butcher shop.
Oh, butcher shop. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the Tony Curtis joke.
Yeah.
He was Jewish, and it was like, yeah, no kidding. But I mean, that says something there about what his at least intentions are, what he imagines this is going to be. But they don't get into that. They don't tell us that much about what he thinks it's going to be.
Right. Well, so this section, once he's returned home, it sets up all of the woes, all of the social and economic ills that are being experienced in the neighborhood. We're back with Kirby now. You see, you know, we got to check in with all the main characters to see like what they're up to and just show like there's no options for anybody. It really puts them into this precarious situation of like, all right, well, I'll work. But then he loses his job at the butcher shop. Everybody's down on their luck. Everybody is desperately in need of some sort of help or a way out or a leg up or something. And that's when this idea of the heist comes in.
Yeah.
Coalition, the group that's put together here now also includes Juanita, like the mother of his child, her younger sister Delilah, who is this is interesting because this is when it gets into one of the more, like we just were talking about with like uptight on previous episodes. This is when we get into a bit more revolutionary politics because she's a member. Delilah's character is now a member of the Nat Turner cadre, which is described as a revolutionary communist military group. So I think the way that the Hughes brothers were looking at it, this is their kind of standing characters for the Black Liberation Army leading into the armored truck heist.
Yeah.
So it serves several different purposes here. It serves as a way for this Nat Turner cadre to have some financial backing, but also they can have access to some guns through this group because it's a militant armed group. But now you've got Anthony, Kirby, Skip, Jose, Delilah, and now they bring in Cleon, who is now currently a devoted minister of his own church in order to rob an armored car that's making a stop in the Bronx from a Federal Reserve Bank on its way to destroy money. So this is where they can rob all the dead presidents, the bills that are unmarked, and could be completely, once they get away with this, none of the money's traceable. They're totally safe if they can pull off this one last heist. This is now where the Hughes brothers, after having done like kind of the teen film scene at the beginning and the horror drama now, when they're in Vietnam and they do sort of the social realism family drama story of Bronx 73 returning after the war. Now we're going to get their heist scene coming up here.
Well, you know, I think, you know, actually, I think we should just double back a little bit because the family drama stuff basically is he ends up living with his high school girlfriend and their kid. Her sister, who takes part in the heist, is an interesting character because she's always been, when they were kids, she was the one who read a lot, right? She didn't have a boyfriend because she read a lot.
Yes.
She's a college student now, right? And she's sort of intellectual. When he first meets her, she's always been like, you could tell when they were kids she was attracted to him. She's attracted to him then. She actually kisses him when they first meet.
Oh, she's flirting with him in the first scene she has. Yeah.
Yeah, she's flirting with him throughout. But the other thing is she brings in the most ham-fisted, why didn't you go over to the Viet Cong thing? And he's just sort of going like, like she's political, but it's like not in practice. Like you wouldn't if you were trying to recruit, and there's a huge amount of recruiting of veterans. And she says like there's veterans in their group. Like that wouldn't be how you recruit one. The first thing you wouldn't do is say things that are super sort of like, but like basically, I think we should just talk a little bit about the downfall of his relationship with Juanita, because he can't be an effective breadwinner. She had a boyfriend who was like a local gangster before that, who was really, really acting as a father figure for her kid, and a
source of finance, like of money too. Yeah,
and continues to be, right. Like he continues to give money, and basically part of what's going on is Anthony can't deal with that. His male macho pride cannot allow any of that. He also has PTSD. He's having dreams. He can't like have sex.
He's drinking more and more.
He's drinking more and more. Like he's falling apart. He can't handle it. She both can't empathize with him, like she does to a certain degree, but also is like, we need you to make more money. And he keeps saying, well, it's going to be fine. And it's like, none of this is realistic.
How? Right. How? Yeah.
And when they finally fight, which is over, is she still sleeping with this guy who's giving her money, who also like beats up Anthony at one point, basically saying like, I could be your friend and you will not, this is why I was saying, like, it's like, how does toxic masculinity, whatever.
Oh, right.
I mean, that's what self-destructs. It's his inability to get beyond the image of what he should be and the actual situation that he's in. And it ends with domestic violence. He threatens to kill her and he chokes her.
Yeah.
And then he meets up, and they're already planning the heist by that point, but then he meets up with her sister and sort of moves in the radical direction. But like, honestly, the sister takes part, I guess, for money for the movement, but she seems to be doing it on her own because they get the gun. It's Keith David's character, I think, who gets the guns.
Oh, he gets the guns. That's right. Yeah, because she joins them, and I remember thinking that too this time watching it, where the sister Delilah joins them in the heist, but like you said, at the same time, even watching it this time, I was like, oh, so she's going to be bringing like her group with them, but it's not. It's just her.
It's just her. It's not.
It's not the whole Nat Turner cadre that she's part of or whatever.
Yeah, it's not clear what her doing this is relationship to the overall cause. I mean, clearly she's doing it for money for the movement.
Right.
But we have to figure that out, and it's not clear, right, if she's shared that. They need an extra person. That's why they've got her, as well as getting Cleon, which is a wild choice.
Cleon, I had just a big star in my notes where I was like, okay, this is one of the logic gaps in this narrative where I was like, how did I not see this part before? Like, Cleon, you're only bringing him in to make sure that it does not go according to plan and ruins his life. Like, there's no benefit to bringing in the guy who used to carry around a severed head for good luck, who is now a settled and devoted minister, apparently on the surface doing okay, leading his flock and everything else.
On the surface,
absolutely. But like, just bringing him in, and you're just like, no. So he stands lookout with Skip with the Chris Tucker character on the outside. And all it really does is set up a dramatic scene where Cleon cannot be the brutal, dispassionate sociopath murderer that he was in Vietnam. That is just not part of him anymore.
Right.
So it's more of like, we're just setting up a narrative thread than anything else really, but it brings like the whole group that we've known so far back together for the heist.
Well, I mean, part of it is that Cleon is worrying about Chris Tucker's character because Chris Tucker during their final battle, during the war had frozen. And so Cleon's pointing out, well, I don't trust this junkie. He's going to freeze up. And it's actually Cleon who freezes.
Well, I mean, he's only there for narrative purposes then. So it's like, man, I don't know about this part. But the heist itself, like it's one of those like individually, like it's a kick-ass heist scene.
Yeah, it's a great heist scene.
It's so good. It's one of the heist scenes where you hear them explain what they're going to do ahead of time. So like there's a couple different ways you can do heist scenes in movies. Sometimes you explain the whole thing and then you get to watch it happen, and it's the fun of knowing the plan and then is it going to go according to plan or not. Sometimes you'll get like a hint of a plan, like maybe a couple details, and then it just gets off and running with the plan, and then there's the thrill of seeing what the plan was play out in advance. And then the other heist movies where you don't know anything about it and you're just seeing the heist go down from the scratch. This is one of those where you hear the whole thing and then you need to hear the whole thing in this case because it does fall apart, and you only know that it falls apart if you're in on knowing what the ins and outs of the heist itself are.
Right.
Yeah, I mean the heist is so iconic. It ended up being the poster image. It's the soundtrack image. It's like the thumbnail image if you look at any streaming service this is on or you're going to rent it from. It's the thumbnail image when you're watching a trailer of it. It's featured even at the top of the movie. Like it's technically a movie that's done in chronological order, but you have the opening credits, and then you do have a quick flash forward of the heist scene with the iconic, white face paint with the black lips and the black rings around their eyes. And it is, I mean, it's iconic for a reason and featured in all the promotional materials for a reason. It's a kick-ass heist scene. Anything else heist scene wise, Isaac? I mean, iconic images, iconic scene.
So part of it is, I mean, everything goes wrong. Including our demolition expert who, is high all the time and like not together and blows up the entire vehicle. You would think they have gotten no money. They appear to get most of the money they intended to somehow because it should all be on fire. I actually don't know how that happens. Well, he gleefully so while they're running for it, there's an amazing scene with them like jumping from car to car as they're running from the cops. It's just a total mess. I mean, one of the things that happens is that, Delilah gets shot during it, trying to save Anthony. And, he's crushed by this. I feel like I would want...
Well, Jose's killed too. He shoots the driver, then the car hits him, and he gets killed as a police car crashes him into a wall.
Oh, yeah, he is killed. Yeah, you're right. He's totally killed. And dramatically, too.
Yeah.
So, like, two of them die. But that is, like, I think them escaping, just that one scene, and it's reminiscent of him jumping over the fences trying to escape from his high school girlfriend's
mother.
Like, it's, I don't know. It's just one more sort of just striking bit of, like, filmmaking,
For sure. Well, then, Skip, Chris Tucker's character, he has died of a heroin overdose. This is as the law enforcement kind of closes in. Traditional, I mean, again, I don't know if it's a nod to Goodfellas or not, but this is the idea. Like Cleon, he's been giving out money, bought himself a Cadillac. So obviously he's being flashy, spending the money they robbed. He has no money to actually be affording all the stuff that he's doing. So that draws the attention of the NYPD. So Kirby and Anthony are gonna, I think they were gonna go talk to Cleon, but then they see him being let out of the church in handcuffs by two detectives. Kirby, the Keith David character, and Anthony Curtis, Lorenz Tate's character, they're preparing like where they're going to do like a fleet of Mexico, I think.
They're going to go for Mexico, but like here's the thing, right? Like the fuck uppery continues there because they're not even that urgent. They're not like they're like there's a point where they're talking about what they're going to do when they get to Mexico. I mean, they're moving out the door, right?
Yeah, right.
But it's like you literally stop to like, and maybe I'll call my daughter. It's like you have no time. You shouldn't have brought clothes. You grab your money and just run. Right. And I mean, honestly, they shouldn't have. I don't know. It's
You should be in the bar that Kirby actually owns. That they know that's where he would be at.
Yes.
So, obviously, like it doesn't go well. It does not go well at all. So Anthony Curtis is sentenced to 15 years to life in prison by an uncredited Martin Sheen as the judge.
Is that a stunt cast, do you think?
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
I mean, he has a certain history with Vietnam movies.
That's true. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I haven't really thought about it that way. I was trying to figure out like when did the West Wing premiere and how close to 95 was that, which it was not, I don't think. But well, because then it's interesting though, because the Vietnam, I guess not quite like defense, but rationale comes up at this quick little trial scene, and then Martin Sheen references being a Marine in World War II.
Well, you see,
or being a veteran himself.
So this is an interesting thing. because he's dismissive of it as not a real war compared to World War II.
Yes, which is an interesting generational kind of bit of politics here.
There's a generational bit of politics. It's also that the traditional way that this is shown, the way the narrative was framed by the right after Vietnam is that it was anti-war movement that would have been dismissive of Vietnam vets. But in this case, it's actually like
vets.
It's a vet. It's probably a relatively conservative judge.
Yeah.
Being dismissive of him. It's an interesting bit there.
It is. And then, Anthony, he throws his chair at the judge before he's being escorted away. And the last image that we get in the movie is, Anthony Curtis now presumably he's got to be like late 20s, young black man in America on a bus headed for prison for basically the rest of his life, which is a very powerful, very thoughtful image, very contemplative image to end on as the music comes up and the credits start to roll.
Yeah.
You definitely don't leave the theater going like, oh, what a movie. Like you leave it's a downer. Like it fucking sucks. He's your audience character. He's taking you through this whole story. And the end of the story is just like friends are dead, no hope, off to prison. He's going off to prison as a young black man in America, now labeled as a cop killer. I guess it wasn't cops, but it was the security guards that were surrounding the truck. So he's a killer heading off to prison. He's not getting parole. He's not getting out. He's gone for the rest of his life.
Right. But I guess, and I hate to keep hammering home on it, but if the point here was the fatalism of it, right, of the inevitability of it, in a certain sense, what's interesting and what I wish they had played on more is that in his case it was not. He had multiple ways out that he never took.
Yeah, I don't think fatalism is like the point to this one though. It's just
I don't think it's the point. I think it to make the final kick work, you would have had to make clear that fatalism wasn't the point.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's a film that like I'm definitely processing different as a bit more of an adult than I was when I started college watching this a bunch. But it is really kind of fascinating to me that they swung for the fences with a sophomore film, and I think there's a lot of successes in the movie that are definitely worth watching and worth revisiting and worth enjoying. But it does sort of have a feel of each component is like kind of like I mentioned, like, okay, here's our teen film section, here's our war as hell film section, here's our social drama section, here's our heist thriller section. It's almost like a greatest hits of film influences.
Right. Yeah. That is, well, I think, in a certain degree, it feels, you pointed this out before, it feels like a couple of very talented 21-year-olds making a movie about experiences that it's not a matter of they didn't have, because we're always making movies about things that we haven't experienced, but they may just not quite have the grasp to bring it all together, but their talent is on the screen in how they present what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because they're very specific as well, because one of their interviews when From Hell came out, they were asking like, what got them into that in the first place? And they're like, oh, well, I'm a comic book nerd or, whatever. So it's like, oh, it's based on the graphic novel, all this stuff. But they were saying how, you don't actually, I think it even came up around when Dead Presidents came out as well, because they, like I mentioned before, they were constantly getting this like, oh, well, are you a filmmaker like Spike Lee? Because like, oh, that's the shorthand for most journalists interview. I'm like, oh, you're also a black filmmaker. Do you know Spike Lee? You're like, what do you think of Spike Lee's movies? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. But what about this? What about this? Like, they were very vocal and like, I don't feel like you have to be a filmmaker that only tells the stories that are part of you or your the race you belong to in that culture. Like you can tell stories about characters that you have absolutely no relation to or no frame of reference to just because it's a good story. So just tell a good story.
Right. And they probably do have a frame of reference, right? Well, this is based off of source material, right? And this is based off of, it's just, maybe in a sense it is the stitching, right? It's that you're taking the source material and you're trying to stitch it into a story. And maybe that's sort of what the disjointedness is a little bit.
Yeah, I think it could be.
But nonetheless, I realize that it sounds like I'm ragging on this movie a lot. And what it really is that I find it interesting. I find it interesting when there's unevenness in movies like this. And this came up with one of our first nostalgia, which was Conan, which I love because of its weird unevennesses.
Yeah. But it's interesting too to take a look back at stuff that like we were really drawn to at a certain point, and then also try to remember like what was it about it that drew you in. Looking at it, through a more adult or more aged lens, does that still connect to you? But then also, I think over the course of the show, we'll end up seeing with different nostalgia picks, like there's some through lines to certain things that were clearly grabbing our attention then that still hold our attention right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is definitely true for you. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think part of what, I mean, you described it like these are young film geeks who are only a little bit older than you, whose influences are not all the same ones as yours, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
And we're absorbing film information in ways that you could directly connect to, right?
Yeah.
So in many ways, you're sort of your peers.
Yeah. Well, it was aspirational, but age-wise, yeah.
Age-wise, yeah.
Yeah. It was part of that, like that post Steven Soderbergh at Sundance in '89 with Sex, Lies, and Videotape, the way Clerks comes out, and whether or not you like Sex, Lies or you like Clerks, there was this idea. It was like, oh wait, we can just go make movies, and like that's a powerful realization as a young person trying to figure out like what your voice is, what you want to do. And I didn't have the pull to make them. I just had like that pull to like appreciate it as it was, and it was thrilling, and it still is thrilling when you see something contemporary that's energizing, that's relatable, that feels very tangibly close to your own, not like your own experience, but like your own interests. Like you were just saying, like these are, film geeks exercising a certain amount of power that was like, oh my God, I want my friends to be able to like pick up a camera, be able to do that and have that kind of experience. And yeah, it felt very, very relatable. And just like the excitement was it was right there. It was very palpable.
So we've talked a little, I think we've woven politics into this, or sort of politics on the periphery. Are there any maybe non-intentional political takeaways that we could take from this?
I don't have anything off the top of my head. Do you?
I mean, for me, it is like, this is an astounding display of how masculinity shapes people and is destructive.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's definitely there.
He goes to war because he doesn't know what else to do, but also because the masculine figures in his life that he has to look up to did the same, and it made them who they are. And none of them bother to frame, because of the way that masculinity is tied into nationalism and everything. None of them are going to tell him, I lost my leg, this wasn't good.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Like, and then the way that he handles being home was always going to be hard. He's the early 70s, the economy's starting to not do well. He's a black man. They mentioned that all the white people are moving out of the neighborhood. So like you're having sort of white flight, all these things. It's always going to be hard, but at every step, I feel like his inability to let go of this hard masculine image undermines what he's trying to do. Not saying he could have succeeded either way, but it makes it harder. So I think it's an interesting display of that sort of thing.
As much as you have those two, like the father and then the father figure role, because he has an actual father, then he also has Kirby as the father figure role. He never has like a sit down moment where like, I'm doing this because you did this. Like there isn't like a heart to heart moment there. It's all just like subtext and implied. Because if you had like a sit down heart to heart, you'd be like, what are you talking about? Or like, it's interesting. Like it's like it's an unspoken male influence to the detriment of everybody involved.
Yeah. More people tell him not to go than to go.
Yeah.
And right. I mean, well, part of it is he says that his father, because we don't see his family and we don't need to, but it is true that it is like his father, he tells his father, like, you always said that Korea made you the man you are, but like, we don't see that because we don't really see their relationship.
Right.
We get a couple scenes that give a lot of information about it and are well composed, but yeah.
Yep. So that is Dead Presidents, the Hughes Brothers film from 1995. Last plug I will throw out for it is it is part of the 90s trend of compilation soundtracks. And since this is a period movie, this is a compilation soundtracks. There's actually 2 volumes of it that collect some of like the best funk and soul music of that era onto I mean, it felt like an infomercial in the 90s on TV now. Into 2 easy to purchase compact discs. These were just in constant rotation around me. If you were around me from 95 to 97, probably, you were hearing the Dead Presidents soundtracks, volume 1 and 2, quite often. And, Menace to Society was a kick-ass compilation soundtrack as well. I guess they'd be playlists on Spotify now. But anyway.
It is a great soundtrack. I can't believe we actually haven't talked about it up until this point. It's a great soundtrack. It's really well used. I feel like those are not like, there's times where there's needle drops that are like,
wow.
Yeah. Like, it's just like, oh, this is, no, they're actually like expertly used needle drops. And it's an amazing soundtrack. And I can totally see why you'd be just listening to that over and over and over again.
I delivered so many pizzas. I worked at so many pizza places going through college. And this was like, if it was a rainy night and I was out delivering pizzas, I was putting in the Dead Presidents soundtrack. Because there's just nothing like hearing The Payback or Do Right Woman or one of those songs when it's just like a rainy day and you're just driving around fucking devastated Dayton, Ohio. Yeah, no, it's impressive. And I also credit to a soundtrack that involves a story about Vietnam, and there's no Creedence Clearwater Revival.
I like Creedence.
I love Creedence, but I cannot do any more Creedence Clearwater Revival set to Vietnam footage.
That is done. That is completely understandable, and it wouldn't have worked in this movie anyway.
It wouldn't have worked anyway. Yeah, no, not at all. So that is Dead Presidents. Isaac, what do we have up next?
So next episode, we are going to be, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. One, we're going to be reviewing our watch challenge. For the end of the month, we had a Black History Month watch challenge. If we can just review those categories real quick for people. 1 Afrofuturist film, 1 film by a Black woman, 1 film by Spike Lee that you have not seen before, and 1 wild card, which could either be, like, let's say, blaxploitation, but it also could be a deep cut from like the LA Rebellion era of like
UCLA film students.
Of UCLA film students. So we'll be going over that, and then we're also, we generally we, especially in this last COVID year, we haven't been covering a lot of current films, but we have jumped back and forth considering everything going on and the themes of this podcast. We will be looking at Judas and the Black Messiah, which just came out on the assassination of the great Black Panther leader, Fred Hampton.
Absolutely. It has been, wow, I guess February is a short month, but it just feels like a very quick month already because I still have a few more to watch before we record next time. So I will be doing that as soon as we sign off here. But before we sign off, we want to make sure to let you know, if you don't mind, if you're enjoying the show, please rate and review the show in whatever podcast app you're using. And if you feel so inclined, tell a friend or 2 or 3. We're up and running on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the usual social media platforms. So follow the links in the show notes if you want to give us a follow there. See some of the content outside of what you hear on the show that we're posting there. And until next time, I am Aaron Spears.
And I'm Isaac Miller. And, stay safe out there, everybody.